Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar today for October, the end of October. And we have a fantastic webinar for you today. I think you'll enjoy this one immensely. It's called Understanding the Automated Cybersecurity Evaluation Toolbox, or ACET. My name is Catherine Baxter. I'm going to be your moderator for today's event. And before I introduce our chairman, who's going to give you a great introductory speech today, let's go over some housekeeping items. So adjust your volume on your computer, please. Turn it all the way up. If you can hear me clearly, you're fine. Drag the bottom right corner of your slide so that you can enlarge it, so that you can see this very well. From this website, you will need to allow pop-ups. There is an Ask a Question feature on the left-hand side of your console. Please ask a question throughout the webinar. Don't wait until the end. And if you remember the name of the speaker, please address your question to that speaker. And as always, in approximately 3 weeks, this webinar is going to be closed captioned and archived for on-demand viewing in our learning management system. We also want to mention one thing before I go to the next slide, and that is we have a survey that you should see on your console. It says survey. Please fill the survey out while you're viewing this webinar. We'd love to get your comments on the content and if you like webinars of this type. We just need your opinion. So now let's go to our NCUA disclaimer, and it says, the materials presented in this webinar are intended as an informative and educational summary of general cybersecurity evaluation information. The NCUA has taken reasonable measures to ensure the quality of the data and other information produced by the NCUA that is available in this presentation. The NCUA, however, makes no warranty, express or implied, nor assumes any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, correctness, or completeness of any information that is available through this presentation, nor represents that its use would not infringe on privately owned rights. The slides are intended for educational and discussion purposes and do not constitute legal advice, nor replace independent professional judgment. Reference to any specific commercial product, process, or service by trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise does not constitute an endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by the U.S. government or the NCUA. So now that we've done our disclaimer, here's our agenda for today. As I mentioned, we're going to have some introductory remarks by Todd Harper. He's our NCUA board chairman. And then we're going to go into some instructions from Ernest Chambers and Christina Sari for using the tool, the ACET. And then we're going to show you the video presentation of the ACET. We'll have closing remarks, and then we will have our Q&A. So without further ado, we're going to turn this webinar over to the Honorable Mr. Todd Harper. Todd, please.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about the NCUA's recently released Automated Cybersecurity Evaluation Tool. For short, we call it the ACET. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased cybersecurity exposures for federally insured credit unions. Phishing, ransomware, and business email compromise are just some of the ways that cyber criminals exploit vulnerabilities within the credit union industry and the broader financial services system. Each of us, the NCUA, state regulators, vendors, and your credit union, has a responsibility to protect our systems, improve our ability to recover from incidents, educate our staff, share information, and report and address potential vulnerabilities. At the NCUA, strengthening the credit union system's resiliency against potential cybersecurity attacks is a supervisory priority. To assist in these efforts and to help credit unions like yours understand its level of cybersecurity preparedness, the NCUA has developed the ACET. The ACET is a downloadable, self-contained app developed to be a holistic cybersecurity resource for your credit union. The ACET's self-assessment is completely voluntary and does not introduce any new requirements or expectations on credit unions. You can use this tool to identify and determine your credit union's level of cybersecurity preparedness. The ACET incorporates appropriate standards and practices established for financial institutions and across the cybersecurity discipline, like the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council's IT Handbook, the recent regulatory guidance, and industry standards like the National Institute of Standards and Technology's Cybersecurity Framework. Most importantly, the ACET also scales to meet the size, scope, and complexity, as well as the risks of all credit unions, regardless of size. The tool's maturity self-assessment allows your credit union to determine the maturity of your cybersecurity program by answering a series of questions, similar to what you would see in some over-the-counter online tax preparation software. The questions assess 5 specific areas. First, cyber risk management and oversight. Second, threat intelligence and collaboration. Third, cybersecurity controls. Fourth, external dependency management. And fifth, cyber incident management and resilience. Ernie Chambers and Christina Sari with the Office of Examination and Insurance will discuss the ACET and its features and capabilities in greater detail in just a few minutes. I want to thank Ernie and Christina, as well as the entire staff in the NCUA's Critical Infrastructure Division, for their excellent work in developing the ACET. The ACET is available from the NCUA at no cost. Let me say again, it's available at no cost. And I encourage you and all credit unions to download and use it. You can find the tool on the agency's website at ncua.gov/cybersecurity. The ACET is an excellent resource, especially for small credit unions and those credit unions with limited resources, to take the first steps in understanding their cyber preparedness. The NCUA is committed to strengthening the readiness of the credit union system to respond to cyber risks through our supervisory program, training, and the development of self-assessment tools like the ACET. Through the Community Development Revolving Loan Fund, we also provide low-income credit unions with grants and loans to address their cybersecurity needs. I hope that everyone taking part in this webinar will find the ACET useful and an excellent way to evaluate your credit union's cyber preparedness levels. Be safe, be well, be kind, be cyber smart. With that, Catherine, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Todd, for those remarks, because cyber readiness is imperative today. There's so much risk out there, and we really appreciate it. And we think the credit union industry will enjoy this particular demonstration. So let's go now to, we have polling questions. I think everyone knows how we do this. We'd like to know the asset size of the credit unions that are here with us today on the webinar. So is your credit union, use the radio buttons on your screen, please. And let us know whether you are in the 0 to 50 million range for your credit union's asset size, 51 to 250 million range, 251 to 500 million range, 501 to 1 billion. Are you greater than 1 billion? And of course, we may have some visitors that are not a credit union. So let us know. Again, 0 to 50 million, 51 to 250 million, 251 to 500 million, 501 to 1 billion. Are you greater than 1 billion or not a credit union? Please use the radio buttons on your screen, and let's see what your answers are today. Okay, all right. So we have a very nice mixture here. In the 51 to 250 million range, we have about almost 28% of our audience. And then another 28% of our audience is in the greater than 1 billion range. Excellent. So we have a nice mixture, but we also have good representation from the 250 to 500 million and also up to 1 billion. That's wonderful. All righty, let me introduce, please, the speakers that we're going to have today on our ACET webinar. Ernest Chambers is the director of the CID, or Critical Infrastructure Division, in the Office of Examination and Insurance. And Christina Sari is an Information Systems Officer in the same division in the Office of Examination and Insurance. And I'm going to turn it over to Ernie now because he's going to give us some introductory comments before we go to our video. Ernie, please.
Thank you, Catherine and Chairman Harper, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Per the Chairman's remarks, the NCUA is providing credit unions the Automated Cybersecurity Evaluation Toolbox, or the Toolbox, a downloadable application developed by the NCUA in conjunction with Idaho National Labs, which contains the NCUA ACIT Maturity Assessment. The ACIT Maturity Assessment mirrors the Federal Financial Institution Examination Council's Cybersecurity Assessment Tool, or the CAT, and is designed to assist credit unions with the identification of cybersecurity risks and help them to determine their cybersecurity preparedness. In addition to the ACIT Maturity Assessment, the Toolbox also provides access to other types of assessments and functionality. These include a choice between several maturity models, the ability to be accessed or assessed against numerous industry-specific standards. As part of this release, the NCUA has also developed a user guide, installation guide, and video, all made available on our updated cybersecurity resources webpage, available at ncua.gov. The video shows users step-by-step instructions on how to use the maturity assessment within the Toolbox, and also provides an overview of the other resources available within the tool. Now, without any further ado, I present to you the ACIT.
Here we go. Thanks, Ernie.
Hello. NCUA's Critical Infrastructure Division and the Office of Examination and Insurance welcomes you to this webinar introducing the new NCUA application, the Automated Cybersecurity Evaluation Toolbox, ACET. The NCUA's Automated Cybersecurity Evaluation Toolbox, or the Toolbox, is a downloadable application developed by the NCUA in conjunction with Idaho National Labs, INL, and contains the NCUA ACIT Maturity Assessment. The ACET Maturity Assessment mirrors the Federal Financial Institution Examination Council's FFIEC Cybersecurity Assessment Tool, CAT, and is designed to assist credit unions with the identification of cybersecurity risk and assist them in determining their cybersecurity preparedness. The assessment provides a framework for analyzing cybersecurity vulnerabilities associated with an organization's overall control system and information technology architecture, as well as a means for the user to document a process for identifying cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Additionally, the assessment offers suggested methods to evaluate options for improvement based on existing standards and recommended practices. The installation guide, provided separately, includes information regarding system requirements, installation procedures, and other related information to complete the Toolbox setup on your workstation. It's also integrated into the Toolbox and can be found in the Help section. It is recommended that users meet the minimum system hardware and software requirements before installing the Toolbox. The Toolbox Installation Guide is accessible for download with the Toolbox. Please be sure to read the installation guide before attempting to install the application. Once installation has completed, open the application by clicking on the ACIT icon on your desktop to open the application. Once the application has opened in a browser window, users will be prompted to either start a new assessment or import an existing assessment. Before proceeding, take note of the various options on this page: the ACIT homepage, the Tools drop-down, the Resource Library, the Help, and User Profile. The ACIT Home button opens the user's landing page. The Tools button opens the Tools menu and provides options outside the assessment process. The Resource Library opens the Resource Library in a new tab and contains a variety of standards, reports, templates, white papers, plans, and other cybersecurity-related documents. The Help button opens the Help menu and provides access to help documentation and user guides for the tool. Additionally, this application has taken into consideration Section 508 of the U.S. Rehabilitation Act, 29 U.S. Code 794D, and has been developed to support users with accessibility requirements. The accessibility document and keyboard shortcuts are also in this Help section. The User Profile button opens the User Profile menu and will display the user name, provides access to view user profile information and their assessments. To begin a new assessment, click on the Start a New Assessment. Once you begin the assessment, you'll notice the assessment is broken down into 3 distinct sections: Prepare, Assessment, and Results. The Prepare tab and menu allows quick access to the Assessment Prepare screen. The Assessment tab and menu allows quick access to the assessment statements and categories. The Results tab and menu allows quick access to the maturity assessment results and reports. When you clicked New Assessment, the application starts the workflow process and automatically brings you to the assessment configuration screen under Prepare. In this section, you'll need to enter the credit union name, city, state, charter number, and current asset size. On the same page, towards the bottom, you'll also notice assessment options. The assessment options will default to maturity model with ACET only selected below it. Leave these 2 items checked and continue with the assessment by clicking Next. After clicking Next, you're presented with the Assessment Information screen. This screen displays the assessment owner and provides an opportunity to add or view additional users through the Contacts panel. Click Next at the bottom of the page and move to the Inherent Risk Profiles screen. The IRP, or the Inherent Risk Profile, has 5 risk areas across 5 categories. It is measured on a scale from least risk to most risk in this order: least, very limited use of technology; minimal, limited complexity in terms of the technology it uses; moderate, uses technology that may be somewhat complex in terms of volume and sophistication; significant, uses complex technology in terms of scope and sophistication; most, uses extremely complex technology to deliver myriad products and services. The Inherent Risk Profile section spans 5 categories and requires responses to 39 questions. To complete each question, select an appropriate response from 1 to 5 for all 39 questions. Additional resources are provided for each question. The risk description icon provides additional clarification of the question. The next icon provides strategies on where the response may be found, and the last icon provides an option to add comments to the question. When you've completed all 39 questions, click Next to move on to the Inherent Risk Profile Summary page. The Inherent Risk Summary page displays the inherent risk levels for the questions answered on the previous Inherent Risk Profiles page. This page displays the inherent risk levels for each of the 5 categories, as well as a total for each of the risk level. within the total row, the column with the highest total represents that institution's overall inherent risk level. The application will automatically determine the cybersecurity maturity range, which is a minimum and a maximum your institution is expected to operate based on the risk-maturity relationship. The table demonstrates the relationship of the inherent risk level and expected cybersecurity maturity range. For example, an institution with an overall inherent risk level of least would be expected at a minimum to have a maturity level of baseline and a maximum level of evolving maturity, whereas an institution with an overall inherent risk level of significant would be expected at a minimum to achieve an intermediate maturity level and a maximum of innovative. There is an option to bypass the inherent risk level results. Using the Override Risk Level drop-down, you have the capability to override the results from the inherent risk profile. For example, your institution inherent risk profile results may have been 1 or least. However, management or the board may feel a risk level of least is not sufficient, that a higher range of cybersecurity maturity may be more appropriate to the institution's size and complexity. In this example, to raise the level of inherent risk and cybersecurity maturity range, you may choose to override least and select minimal. Anytime the risk level is overridden, an explanation is required. Once satisfied with the inherent risk profile risk level, click Next to move on to the Statement screen on the Assessment tab. When you're first presented with the Statement screen, you'll be presented with the following: Cybersecurity Maturity Bar, Domain Header, Component Header, Assessment Factor Header, and Statement Text. The Cybersecurity Maturity Level bar displays the range of maturity that has been calculated by completing the inherent risk profile. The highlighted maturity level represents the minimum expected maturity level, and the maturity levels in bold italics represent the remaining range. The application will default to only displaying the statements associated with the calculated minimum expected maturity level. In this example, the inherent risk is least, representing a cybersecurity maturity range from baseline to evolving. However, only the baseline statements will automatically be displayed. In our previous example, the institution had an inherent risk level of least, which has a cybersecurity maturity range between baseline and evolving, with baseline as the minimal level of cybersecurity to be met. Only baseline statements will be displayed. The minimum, in this case, baseline statements are required to be completed. An institution may choose to achieve higher than the minimum in its maturity range. In this case, an institution can select an additional maturity level on the maturity level bar in each of the domains. To continue with our example, an institution with an inherent risk level of least would like to assess itself against evolving statements as well. The institution clicks on Evolving on the Cybersecurity Maturity bar in each domain, and all evolving statements will also display and now be required to be completed. Now that we completed the inherent risk profile, review the inherent risk summary to find this institution has an inherent risk of least and a cybersecurity maturity range between baseline and evolving. It's time to complete the statements. Starting at the top right, we see the Collapse All, Expand All filter. Clicking on Expand All will display minimum required statements for every assessment factor of the maturity range. The maturity label displays each statement's associated cybersecurity maturity level. The answer buttons reflect the options you have for answering each statement. Yes answers are green. No answers are red. Not applicable answers are blue. The not applicable is used when the question does not apply to the system or facility. It should be used with discretion and has the effect of removing the question from consideration. Any question marked as not applicable will not show up in the online analysis or reports as a gap or missed answer, nor will they count as a positive answer. The yes label stands for yes with compensating control and is used when an alternate or different method is being used to address the concern in the question. Compensating controls are a consideration when an entity cannot meet a requirement. If you need further information to respond to the statement icons provide additional options and resources. The Exam Step button gives additional details into how to ensure that the statement is being met. The Supplemental button provides more detailed information for each statement. The Comments button allows you to enter comments related to a statement. Comments button displays a red dot over the comments icon when the statement has comments. The References button displays all the associated standards associated with the assessment question. When you click on those references, the selected standard will be displayed for reference. The Observations button allows the user to associate observations with a statement. The Observation button displays a red dot over the observation icon. After completing all the required minimum statements in this example baseline, you'll notice that statement progress wheels should all be checked, indicating all required statements have been answered. Once all statements have been answered, click Next to move on to the Results tab. The Maturity Results summarizes the results of each domain. The domain statements are answered within the Statements tab. Within each domain are assessment factors and contributing components. Under each component, there are declarative statements describing an activity that supports the assessment factor at that level of maturity. Each maturity level includes a set of declarative statements that describe how the behaviors, practices, and processes of an institution consistently produce the desired outcomes. The assessment starts at the baseline maturity level and progresses to the highest maturity, the innovative level. An item marked as incomplete has not been completely answered. An item that has been fully answered but does not meet the baseline level is designated ad hoc. Once you've reviewed the maturity results page, to ensure all components are not marked incomplete, click Next to move to the ACET dashboard screen. The dashboard's primary functions are to summarize the information input from the assessment inherent risk profile. The first section list summarizes the demographics information. The Inherent Risk Profile section simply repeats the information found in the Inherent Risk Summary page. The Cybersecurity Maturity section summarizes the maturity levels. If required statements have not been answered, maturity levels in those areas will show as incomplete. Once you have reviewed the ACET dashboard, click Next to move to the Results section of the assessment. The Results section houses the various reports available for review. To generate a report, click on the specific report link on the report screen. The report will open in a new tab. Please note, some reports aren't available if you haven't completed your assessment. Completion is answering all statements within your target level. In addition to the ACET maturity assessment, the toolbox also provides access to other types of assessments and functionalities. These include a choice between several maturity models, the ability to be assessed against numerous industry standards, as well as access to draw your own network diagrams. In order to access the other maturity models, navigate to the Maturity Models tab. If ACET Only is checked, unselect ACET Only and select from the list of other available maturity models. The options include Capability Maturity Model Certification, CMMC, External Dependency Management Assessment, EDM, and Ransomware Readiness Assessment, RRA. Based on recent news and events, ransomware attacks continue to rise as a top cyber threat, impacting both private sector businesses as well as government agencies. A ransomware attack is a type of cyber attack that is aimed at encrypting an organization's data and extorting payment to restore access to the data or other blackmail scheme. The RRA module provides users with a set of recommendations, mitigations, and practices targeted at helping them defend their organization's network and systems. By selecting Standard under the Assessment Configuration tab, users will be presented with a selection of questions based on industry-recognized best practices and standards. Currently, the tool contains 48 different best practices and standards. Each standard has been decomposed into simple English questions. The exact language of the standard is also available if needed. In closing, for institutions using the toolbox, management will be able to enhance their oversight and management of the institution's cybersecurity by doing the following: identifying factors contributing to and determining the institution's overall cyber risk, assessing the institution's cybersecurity preparedness, evaluating whether the institution's cybersecurity preparedness is aligned with its risk, determining risk management practices and controls that are needed or need enhancement and actions to be taken to achieve the desired state, and informing risk management strategies. Thank you. This concludes your introduction to the new NCUA ACET Automated Cybersecurity Evaluation Toolbox, or the Toolbox.
All right, so now that we've watched the ACET demonstration, we're going to have some poll questions to ask you to see if you what you got out of it. And so let's get to our first poll question. So now, after you've watched this video demonstration, here's the question. Do you think the new toolbox will assist your credit union in controlling cyber risk? So that's a yes or no or maybe answer, or not a credit union. So again, the question is, do you think the new toolbox, the ACET, will assist your credit union in controlling cyber risk? We'll give you a few seconds to answer that question. Yes, no, maybe, or are you not a credit union? Let's see what our results are. Okay, so Ernie and Christina, we have some positive responses. We have about almost 58% of our audience said yes, they think that this new tool will help them in controlling cyber risk. And some say, well, maybe. So they're still on the fence a little bit. Let's go to the next polling question. We have one more for you. So please use the radio buttons on your screen Do you plan on using the new toolbox to conduct self-examinations? So this is another yes, no, maybe, or not a credit union. Do you plan on using the new toolbox to conduct self-examinations? Is it a yes, no, maybe, or are you not a credit union? We'll give you a few seconds to sort of chew on that before we go to our results. Let's see what our audience says. So okay, great. So the audience says 60% says that they do plan on using the new toolbox to conduct self-examinations. And 30%, we still have a few on the fence, Ernie and Christina. They say, well, maybe. So I'm going to turn it over now to Ernie to give us a few concluding remarks before we go to our Q&A. Ernie, please.
Thank you, Catherine. Indeed. And, I actually would like to, versus the concluding remarks, I will leave those towards the end of the presentation because we've got some great questions coming in, and they all seem to kind of center around the Intrex. There, of course, are a lot of inquiries around what we've done thus far and where we're going. So I want to say this, and maybe it will allay some of the fear, maybe even the confusion that's out there. So I will lead off with this. Cybersecurity continues to be one of the agency's supervisory priorities, and we continue to enhance credit union cybersecurity resilience through ongoing improvements to the examination program and by providing credit unions with guidance, information, and resources. Ongoing monitoring and adjusting of internal controls, risk management practices, and risk mitigation strategies that adapt to the increasingly complex technology infrastructure and cybersecurity landscape are critical to our continued development of the NCUA Information Security Examination Program. So we ultimately have, as NCUA, a responsibility to provide you all with a program that is there to examine information security. What we've done in the piloting of the Intrex CU, which we believed would have been the tool that we would have moved forward with, we gleaned some valuable lessons that we have now integrated and are trying now to re-message, if you would, a program that now ultimately includes the lessons that we've learned from Intrex CU in moving the NCUA's Information Security Examination Program forward. Now, that program consists of two elements. There is an assessment bucket under which we have this wonderful new self-administered tool or revised tool that is there for download and consumption at no cost to our credit union. In the second bucket, which is currently under development and includes the lessons that we learned from the 18-month pilot of Intrex CU. That is our Information Security Examination Program. I've taken internally to kind of calling things by their full name. When my mom would do that, I knew I was in trouble. Ernest Berlin Christopher Chambers Jr. Well, we're not so much in trouble here as we are trying to make sure we message correctly and provide clarity to our institutions around our responsibility to deliver an information security examination program. So underneath that second bucket are all of our examination responsibilities under the information security program, and we are feverishly working to deliver on our promise to our institutions. So based on the results of the pilot, we identified areas for improvement with Intrex CU, and we are working with the regions to rebuild the program to be scalable according to the institution's complexity and asset size. We plan to provide training and testing of the program through June of 2022, and then to finalize for rollout in September of 2022. We just ask that you be patient with us as we move forward. It is our, at least in my division, and in OEI, the Office of Examination and Insurance, our primary priority. So I hope that clarifies some of the questions that are in the queue. And Catherine, we are prepared to start taking other questions that may be there in the queue. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ernie. I know that we do have quite a few questions. And before we get to them, I just want to remind our audience to please join us. We have a virtual Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit coming up November next month, November the 2nd through the 4th. And it's going to provide opportunities to share best practices, address challenges, advancing diversity, and so forth. And we think you'll enjoy it. If you want to register for this particular event, you can go to ncoa.gov. There are going to be sessions each day from around 12:30 to 5, and you can pick the sessions that you want to go into. But this was very successful program last year, and so this year it's going to be another very nice one. And so we're inviting everyone to join us for that. And also, what I would like to do is to give you the contact page for the Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion. If you are interested in chartering or CDFI certification, FOM, Field of Membership Expansion, or low-income designation, grants and loans, education, this is our contact information. And you can download the slide presentation, ladies and gentlemen, in your console. It's available for download. And also, I'd like to give you Ernie's division. Here's his contact information, him and Christina. They're in the Critical Infrastructure Division of E&I. And so that's their information. And so now let's get to our Q&A. We have a ton of questions, and we're going to get to as many of them as we possibly can. So Ernie, one of the things that you, I think, mentioned, we have quite a few that want to know how they can access this tool. Can you or Christina tell the audience how to access the ACET?
Absolutely. I'm happy to. It's as easy as the landing page of ncua.gov. So if you type in the URL ncua.gov, right there is a bright shining shield, the ACET shield. Click on that. It should provide you and direct you into the cybersecurity resources page where the ACET tool is housed. ncua.gov. Thank you, Catherine.
Let's see if we can go to Christina. Christina, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So one person says, it appears that this is desktop only. Will there be a version which can be installed on a server with multiple users?
Sure. This is currently a standalone desktop application. The data is only stored locally on your system. However, if you do have multiple users, you are able to use the export function to send your data to the next user, and the next user can actually import the data, complete the assessment, and then you can keep sending it down the line. So you actually can have multiple users complete the assessment.
Awesome. Okay. So now let's see. We have another one. While we wait for Ernie to get back on, I think we kind of lost him for a minute. So Christina, let's see if we can ask you this question. One credit union said that the ACET has been around for a few years. Have there been any recent changes?
For the ACET itself, no. This is, however, a new toolbox for us. One of the, I think, enhancements of the toolbox is the ability in the maturity assessment to only see the questions that you need to answer at a minimum. So if many of you have completed the ACET in the past and you saw that spreadsheet of 495 questions, it was sometimes overwhelming for people. So what this application does is only provide you the minimum amount of questions that you need to answer based on your risk level.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's see if we have Ernie back. Ernie, are you back?
Ma'am, you have me back. I actually do not have fat fingers, but I just had a fat finger incident. I hit the wrong button. I am so apologetic for that
okay.
miscue. You were in capable hands with Christina. Sorry, no doubt. So I'm back.
Yes, we were. I had a question for you. I want to see if I can find what that question was again before I went to Christina. You've answered, we've had multiple questions about the ACIT replacing NTREX. Oh, here's a good one. Let's see. Nope, we already answered that one. Give me 1 minute. Here we go. And I think you already answered this one as well, Ernie. So we just have a lot of questions that are asking for clarification between the ACIT and NTREX. Is there, and some people are saying that they would also, I'll answer this question. They would like to know if this webinar is going to be available for viewing, and it will be. It'll be available on ncua.gov for viewing in approximately 3 weeks, and also in our learning management system. You can access the learning management system also on ncua.gov. If you go there and you go to the Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion, you should be able to go to the learning page from the Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion on ncua.gov to access the LMS. And the LMS is for credit unions only. So here's another question. And Ernie, I don't know if this one, you've answered it before, but let's try it. A credit union wants to know, do they need to manage 2 sets now, NTREX and ACET? Which one will be examined by NCUA?
Okay, it's just important now to understand that we are currently revamping and developing the examination program. The ACIT tool that is in their possession now or available for download is to be self-administered. It is there totally for the use by the credit union and will not be used by our examiners at this time to conduct any examinations. And I want to make sure in that deconfliction, it's important that folks understand, yes, the automated cybersecurity evaluation tool, as it is called now, was indeed the automated cybersecurity examination tool. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I ask for your forgiveness, please, as we try to move forward and deconflict, which is another reason why we actually have went with that naming convention versus what was there before. And I believe that with this tool, they will agree that it will move us forward and closer to where we want to and need to get as we approach the accomplishment and completion of the revision of the examination program. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Ernie. I think you did answer that very clearly. Here's another one, and then we're going to move to Christina. So a credit union, this is a good question. A credit union asks, is it going to be required that they use the ACIT based on asset size or not? And will it be required in the future?
As to the future, I'll take that portion first. We are currently, again, in revision for our examination process regarding this particular tool. It is self-administered, so we hope that it will be used. We encourage its use in the environment, but as to what we will do in the future, that is still under consideration. And I'm sorry, the first part of that question, Catherine, can you repeat that, please?
Let me see if I can get to it. Wait a minute, because we have so many questions here. Let me see. All right, they just wanted to know if they're going to be required to use it. And wait a minute, let me get up here. Okay.
I got it.
You got it? Okay, great.
Yeah, I got it. And no, there is no requirement to use the new ACID tool. We highly encourage its use. There actually was another question in the queue that I saw where folks were wondering if using or continuing to use the cybersecurity framework from NIST or the CAT are still viable options. Absolutely. What we want to ensure is that a risk-focused process and assessment process is being applied to the environment so that you can better protect yourself. Whatever the tool, any of the tools that are viable, especially those out of the HSCISA, the CSET, there are any number of tools that are out there to include the NIST cybersecurity framework. Please, by all means. And our product, the ACID, is indeed derivative of those products. I hope that answers the question.
Right, so that they could use other tools as well. Is that what you're saying, Ernie?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes,
fantastic. Okay. So, Christina, I do have one for you because a lot of your questions were answered when you let people know that whether it's a multi-user application and so forth. But here's another question. One credit union said that they used the ACID evaluation questionnaire about a couple of years ago, and they just want to know, with the tool that's come out, are there any significant updates or newer versions that they need to be aware of? This tool now, is it going to be more of the same information that they did a couple years ago?
Sure. There's actually a couple pieces to this. Right now, what we discussed today was the actual toolbox. One of the things that we wanted to highlight during this webinar was the ability to conduct a ransomware assessment. That obviously is important in the threat environment that we're in right now. So that is also available to institutions in the toolbox. As far as when they completed the ACID tool, which was that spreadsheet with the, like I said, there's 495 questions, I believe, and what we're calling now the maturity assessment. What this tool does, like I said before, is it only will show an institution the minimum amount of questions that they need to answer at first. They are, of course, able to then increase how many questions they would like to answer. But like I said, instead of seeing those 495, they will just see the minimum at first questions that they need to respond to.
Excellent. I do have one more question for you, Christina. Now, do you know whether the software, one credit union wants to know if the software will work on a Mac, an Apple computer?
I'm going to phone a friend for a second.
Oh, no problem. You know what? We can just get back with the credit union on that answer if you have to find out. That's not a problem. We can just get back with them. But that's a great question.
I actually did get the answer. It is no.
It's no. Okay, so it does not work on a Mac. Sorry. I think we have time for one or two more questions. I think this one is going to go to you, Ernie. The credit union mentioned, what does ad hoc mean as a maturity rating?
Actually, Christina, would you take that question, Madame?
Christina.
Sure. So with many maturity assessments, there really is no level that's really called sub-baseline. So we changed that sub-baseline to ad hoc. Ad hoc just means that the program, the information security program itself, is ad hoc. And it is not necessarily a program that would be considered, I guess, well-established with policies, et cetera.
Awesome. So now we have one more question, I think. It actually depends on how long it takes you to answer it. So here's the question. This is a great question. Historical information. The credit union says, will you be able to look back on previous ACIDs within the toolbox once they've entered multiple ones?
So for the toolbox, absolutely. It will keep all of the assessments that you conduct until you delete them. So you can actually see your institution, how you've progressed through time as well.
Excellent. Okay. Nope, I think we have time for one more. I'm going to try to get a short question here. So one credit union asked this question. Any plans for this to be cloud-based for better collaboration? Christina or Ernie? That you know of.
Sure. We are looking, obviously, at first. This is our first year putting this out. We are considering developing this further in the future, but that is under consideration.
Correct, Christina. You hit your button before I did, but that is we are always in a continuous process improvement cycle, or at least we are now around this program, as it is our chief concern in the division. Appreciate the question.
Excellent. Okay. I keep saying we have time for one more, but I think we're fresh out because we want to let everyone go. We want to end the webinar by 4 o'clock. So we are going to get these questions that we didn't get to answered, and we will post them along with the webinar in our learning management system. And I'm going to ask Ernie if he has some concluding remarks that he would like to address the audience with. Ernie?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much, Catherine, and our listening audience. In closing, we trust that you've gained some clarity regarding the ACET maturity assessment and are well on your way to identifying your cybersecurity risk preparedness. Please consult the associated user guide, installation guide, and the video, which is archived. Should you have further questions or concerns, you can access all of the aforementioned at our redesigned cybersecurity resources webpage, available at ncua.gov. The NCUA appreciates your time and attention to this matter. Be safe, stay vigilant, and cyber smart. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone, and a great week.